Are you seeking fulfillment for your life? Do you want freedom from fear? That's why we're here. Welcome to Jesus 101, introducing you to the real Jesus. And now, here's your host, Elizabeth Talbot.
Welcome to Jesus 101. I am so happy that you have joined us. We are doing a series on radical discipleship, where ordinary people accept extraordinary grace, and that changes them. But before we start today's program, I want to tell you a story. And I'm sure you have probably heard about this story. This was a man who was walking on the beach, and all of a sudden he sees this other man doing this very strange movements. And it looked like he was kind of jumping or something like that. And so he caught up with the man and said, "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm saving all these starfish. I came out here and all the waves brought this starfish out of the water. And if I don't put them back inside the water, well, they're going to die." And this man started laughing and says, "Whew, there's millions of them out there. They're all going to die." And so this man grabbed one more and threw it in the water and said, "Well, I just made all the difference in the world for that one, didn't I?" And when I heard that story, I said, wow, if you make a difference for one person in your life. I mean, for me, it's mind-boggling the fact that if I was the only sinner in the whole world, Jesus would have come for this one, just this one. So I'm going to just put a candle on here. Let's see. And I'm sure you heard about this little light of mine. Well, this little light of mine is actually little. But what if this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. And what if that changes one person's life? Just one. What if somebody that was feeling really low and worthless all of a sudden finds purpose in life just because somebody stopped and said, "Yeah, you're worth it. As a matter of fact, you're worth it so much that if you were the only person in this whole world, Jesus would have come and died for you." Well, many of us, I included, are not very good with just one-to-one. And it seems like it's easier to talk about the cross to big crowds, and a lot of people are into thousands and thousands in evangelism and how many hundreds and we baptized and all of this. But actually the way Jesus did it was different. The longest sermon we have of Jesus, John 3, is to one person, to Nicodemus. And we have one disciple that we're going to study today, that his specialty was bringing people one to one. And I have somebody here with me today that his specialty is one-to-one, and I want to introduce him to you one more time, Pastor Mike Tucker. Thank you for being with us.
You know it's my joy to be here.
Yes, and actually it's my joy to have you in our set. It's our privilege to have you here. And some of you have heard that Pastor Tucker is a specialist in pastoral counseling, so he many times talks to people one-to-one, and you really enjoy that, don't you?
I love it. I've seen God make a difference in people's lives. There are times when you leave a counseling office and you realize that the Holy Spirit was there, that something radical took place there, and you realize it wasn't you.
Yes, yeah, that's right. That God used you to touch one person.
One person, or maybe two people with a marriage, that God uses. There have been times when I've walked out of a counseling office and just been so thrilled, I just shout at God and just say, "Thank you, Lord."
Wow.
And even shout at the devil saying, "You lost this one."
Oh, wow. like the starfish. You lost that one.
You lost this one. I call him a turkey. "You turkey, you lost this one."
But usually people think of evangelism as a, major thing, and as a, but the truth is, in the Bible, not only Jesus, but in this case, Andrew, he was a disciple that brought Jesus
One person at a time, right?
Right.
He would bring or a small group or just one person to Jesus, one at a time.
Exactly.
I remember a man who told me a story about his pastor. His pastor was a mighty man of God, and he loved him. And he told me a story about how his pastor became a Christian. A great evangelist came to the city, spent a lot of money, held these meetings, and only one baptism took place.
Wow.
And he was so discouraged. But he said, that baptism became my pastor. And that pastor is making a huge difference in this city.
Wow.
And many more people are knowing Jesus because of his influence and his work today. So what seemed to be a failure to this man, because it's only one.
One, yeah, exactly.
And then all true evangelism is always one-to-one.
Yes.
You know, you and I have the privilege of speaking to millions of people. We get to do that, and that's great. But what that does is it plants a seed.
That is the point.
Yeah.
I mean, were you there when we celebrated the 1 millionth graduate of Voice of Prophecy?
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Okay, so there was, Voice of Prophecy is a ministry of 85 years or so.
Yeah, and you and I both did some programming for Voice
That's
of Prophecy.
right. Actually, we did it for about 300 programs or so. And this was the 1 millionth graduate on Bible school, right? And they brought this girl from wherever she was from, and she had found a church, and she had decided to become a Christian. And then she talked about this one old lady that greeted her and came to say hello when she walked into the church. And they said, come and sit with me. And then whatever. And she says, you know what? Even though the lessons were great, I stayed in the church because of that one old lady.
Yeah. You know, there's been a lot of research that people can believe the right thing when they go to a church, but unless they make 6 friends, they won't stay. It doesn't matter what the preacher said. It doesn't matter what anything else happens, unless there's this one-to-one contact with at least 6 people in that congregation.
Wow, what a great
They
research.
will not stay. But if they can make those kind of relationships, 6 friends, 6 people who know them by name, 6 people who
are involved in their lives, and
who notice if they're not there.
Yes, exactly.
6 people,
Yes.
they'll stay for a lifetime.
Yeah, wow, that's great. You know, I think that's the answer, because if people say, why are so many people leaving the church, you know? And I'm a little, in that sense, a little resistant to big numbers, you know? When people say, well, we baptized thousands and thousands of people, and I'm going, okay, can you please give the other statistic?
Yeah, how many left?
How many left in the first year?
Yeah.
And actually, it's quite a bit, because they don't find those people, they don't make that connection with the one person.
Churches that are not safe will not make those connections. But churches that are safe, churches that have an abundance of the love of Jesus, has people that are just longing to make friends with people and tell them about their
We all
Savior.
need to connect.
They want to connect.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, I've done quite a bit of work on self-esteem and addictions and all of that. And we're all needing to know that we have some value for somebody.
Yes.
Yeah, that's why you really find your worth at the foot of the cross, right? But when somebody says, look, I noticed that you were not there, or I noticed you were there, all of a sudden, our self-worth is like, oh, really?
I matter.
I matter, after all.
I'm just talking to a woman the other night who was weeping because she felt like she wasn't of value to anyone.
Wow.
I have no value to anyone. In fact, I've got people on the internet who contact me through Facebook, and that is their claim. I have no value to anyone. I'm worthless. I'm no good.
Wow.
And you know, the message of the cross is, you have great value.
Yes, if you were the only one.
Christ would have died for you.
Just for you.
Yeah.
And today we're going to see a disciple that some people would think that he lived in the shadow of his brother.
Yes.
You know, maybe there are some people listening to us today or viewing our program that feel that way. This is Peter's brother.
Yes.
I mean, he probably was known as, hey, here comes Peter's brother. You know, have you ever known somebody by their relationship with somebody else?
Yes.
Not by who they are, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, Andrew was Peter's brother, because Peter was the one, the big mouth one.
My daughters grew up saying that they were only known as Mike Tucker's daughters. And they did not particularly like that.
That's funny. My dad has a joke that he always says, because he worked so many years in South America as a pastor and whatever. And I was obviously known as Juan Carlos Vieira's daughter.
Yes.
Until we came to the United States. And he worked for many years, but now he's retired, and he translates my books into Spanish. And he says, now I am the father of Elizabeth Talbot. And we laugh about it.
It changes, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It changes.
And actually, Andrew is a model that I want to imitate, and I have a long way to go on this, because he sought people one by one. Yes. And before we start, I want to show you, I don't know if you knew that I collect precious moments.
No, I did not know that.
Well, I have many, 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 and any viewers that would like to give me a precious moment, just
That's
kidding.
a shameless plug right there.
No, just kidding. But I actually collect them, and this one is out. You can no longer get it unless it's used and somebody else has it. But it's one of the old-time favorites, and is a boy who is trying to see what's wrong with the world because the world is sick.
It's got a
and so it
Band-Aid
has a
on it, it's
Band-Aid on
broken,
it, and
yeah.
it has one of these, what do you call these?
Yeah, like a
the
hot water bottle or something on top of it,
and he has
yeah.
a little, and he's trying to see what's wrong with this world, right?
He's listening to the heartbeat.
Exactly. And then on the bottom it says, Jesus is the answer.
Yeah.
And this is a classic of precious moments. And I think that Andrew is this little boy because he was always seeking to see where was this Messiah, the answer of all the scriptures, of all the prophecies were. And when he found the answer, you couldn't stop him because he went to all his friends and go, Jesus is the answer, Jesus is the answer, Jesus is the answer. So he went to Nathaniel, he went to this and he went to that. And this little boy is Andrew. And you say, yeah, but how much can one person do? Yeah. Well, let's find out because this is today's program. How much can a person do when they come to believe Jesus is the answer?
Right.
So Andrew became a very eager follower of Jesus, and he's the fourth, always mentioned fourth in the first circle. Remember that we said that disciples are in three circles?
Three circles of four, and he's always number 4 mentioned in that
in the first circle. So we have Peter,
James, John,
Andrew.
Andrew.
Okay, so he's always the fourth, and of course he's Peter's brother. So many times it's mentioned that way too.
Right.
So let's read a little bit about him because they shared a house. Peter and Andrew shared a house, and he is the first. They were the first disciples, Peter and Andrew, to be called to full-time ministry. I mean, what a privilege to say, "Hey, leave your fishing.
Yeah, come
follow me." So we're going to read chapter 1 of John. This is one of those times when Andrew, right from the very beginning, says, hey, we found him, we found him, we found him. So this was a man who always wanted to, he was seeking. So first he became a disciple of John the Baptizer, and then he became a disciple of Jesus. So you have John 1?
Yes, I do. Starting with verse 35.
Yeah, that would be great.
Again, the next day, John was standing with 2 of his disciples. This is John the Baptist.
Yes.
And he looked at Jesus as he walked and said, behold, the Lamb of God. The 2 disciples heard him speak, and they followed Jesus. And Jesus turned and saw them following and said to them, what do you seek? And they said to him, Rabbi, which translated means teacher, where are you staying? And he said to them, come and you will see. So they came and saw where he was staying, and they stayed with him that day, for it was about the 10th hour. One of the 2 who had heard John speak and followed him was Andrew, Simon Peter's brother.
There you go. So one of the first people, he's eager, he's looking for an answer, and I'm sure that many of our viewers today are looking for an answer. Maybe you're in the middle of turmoil, you have no peace, or you have anxiety, or you're simply saying, there has to be more to life than this. Well, Andrew was that person. He became an eager seeker. And so first he went to John. John brought something different. And so he followed John. He was in the wilderness with John. But one day John saw Jesus.
Pointed to him
and said, that is the Lamb of God. And Andrew said, okay then.
That's where I'm going.
That's where I'm going. So Andrew followed Jesus and immediately becomes this one-to-one evangelist because he's going to start to look for his loved ones to tell them, I found him. Jesus is the answer. Jesus is the answer. Yeah. And so he goes one by one. And actually we have
what he did first?
What?
Jesus, what are you seeking? He said, where do you live? Can I come home with you?
Yeah.
In other words, he said, it's too much just to talk about that here.
Yes.
I want to get to know you.
Yes.
I need to know you. So can I come and be with you?
Yes.
So he sought out intimacy with Jesus. I want to come to your house.
Yes.
I may just stay there. Who knows?
Yes. Yeah. I just need to hear what you have to say.
That's right.
And so immediately after that, it says in verse 43 of the same chapter, John chapter 1:43, the next day he purposed to go into Galilee, and he found Philip, Jesus did, and said to him, follow him. And Philip was from Bethsaida, the city of Andrew and Peter. And then Philip will go and get Nathaniel. And here we have one after the other starting to go and call everybody. But,
one to one.
Don't you think that it's a little hard to be in the background? I mean,
well, Peter got all the press, didn't he?
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
I mean, who doesn't know Peter?
And James and John, everybody knew them.
Yeah.
But Andrew, what is it, a little brother and nobody
exactly.
knows him? Yeah.
And I always say the people that really matter, and I will say it again, I said it a moment ago, are the ones that are behind the scene. I mean,
Absolutely.
none of this would happen if we didn't have all these other people that are behind the scenes.
Someone made that set. It was not me because it's still standing. If I'd made it, it'd fall down, you know. So,
well, actually, Chris made the set, and his wife did
Stained
the wood.
Yeah.
I mean, so many people. My husband went to buy the bread early this morning at 7 a.m. You know, so that I could have my props. You know,
that's right. You got to have props.
I went fishing. No, just kidding.
Yeah.
No, we went to get the fish during the. You know, there's so many people behind the scene, but Andrew is always in the shadow of Peter. So let's talk about it. Can you have an effective ministry saving one soul at a time?
One soul at a time. I remember I was doing grief recovery years ago, and every quarter I'd have a new class. It'd be a 5-week class, and we would help people who had had a recent loss. One woman came the first time I did this, and after, you know, we had a large enough crowd, I really didn't get to meet her, but she came every night. And then the next quarter she was back, but she was sitting with someone. And again, I didn't get to talk to her. The next quarter, she came again with a different person.
Wow.
And what I found out is that she was so helped by the series because of her loss of her son, that her ministry now was whenever she found someone who had a loss was to befriend them and say, come with me, I'll take you to grief recovery, this is going to help you.
Wow.
And so every quarter she came with a new person who just had a loss and would sit with them through the whole series again. She was making a difference in those people's lives, not just hearing the lectures and engaging in the discussions, but her ministry, her love for those individuals was healing to them and helped them overcome the experience of that loss.
You know, I wish I could tell you that I never needed that, but I did.
Yes.
You know, I went through difficult times in my life, and at that time, somehow the crowd couldn't help me.
No.
You know, I went through very difficult times. Some of our viewers know that I got divorced from my first husband, and you know, we obviously I had biblical reasons for it, but we worked on the marriage anyways, and I was married for 15 years. We couldn't make it work, and one person said, you need to get help for this, to get through this, you know. And this person walked me through the darkest years of my life. And
a godsend.
It was a godsend. And I have to tell you, if I could probably mention 5 people in my life that they didn't take the time to sit down with me and walk me through darkness, I would not be here today.
Wouldn't be here. Yeah.
You know, and I can talk about it openly now because I've been married to my husband Patrick for 15 years, and you know, he had 3 daughters when I married him, and we have 7 grandchildren. And if you told me 20 years ago that this would be my life, now
no one would have believed it. You wouldn't have believed it.
I couldn't have believed it.
And yet all the people that you talk to about Jesus on television, radio, and podcast every day, that would not happen had it not been for each one of those 5 individuals who walked you through different parts of your life.
And there was one specific individual during those 4, because God sends you people for each stage of your life.
Yes.
There was this one individual who's no longer with us, unfortunately, and he got brain cancer afterwards and eventually died. He walked me through it. He was a pastor who also had a degree in psychology. He walked me through it, and that one person was a bridge between a valley to where I am today.
He was an Andrew. That's all there is to it.
He was an Andrew.
He was an Andrew.
You know, and he actually was very public too, but he had this other side to him that nobody was too little for him to see him. I mean, what a I could start crying because he saved my life.
Yes.
You know, and Andrew was that person. No gift was too small. Yeah. No person was too small.
Too insignificant.
Nobody was insignificant. Yeah. And if you ask somebody that went through a divorce or through a grief recovery or through something, one person grabbed them by the hand and said, "Hey, come with me. Let's sit down. Let's talk." Yeah. And I had that one person, and I will forever be thankful for that. Absolutely. And we are going to go to one of the only miracle that we have that is in all 4 Gospels. It's very interesting because you would think that some miracles would be repeated. Matthew, Mark, and Luke tell a lot of the same miracles, but John only has one miracle in common with all the other three, and that is the feeding of the 5,000. And here, Andrew shows up again in the feeding of the 5,000. Yeah. And simply because he was not as overwhelmed as the rest of the disciples with what Jesus said. We have 5,000 people that are needing to be fed.
Yeah.
And verse 5 is where we're going to take it. And poor Philip, we're going to talk about Philip later, but Philip is always like, what? Take the calculator. How are we going to do this? And Andrew silently does what he does best.
Therefore, Jesus, lifting up his eyes and seeing that large crowd was coming to him, said to Philip, where are we going to buy bread so that these may eat? And he was saying to test him.
That's right.
For he himself knew what he was intending to do. And Philip answered him, 200 denarii worth of bread is not sufficient for them, for everyone to receive a little. And one of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother.
You always have the opposition here. Andrew, by the way,
because you wouldn't know him otherwise.
Yes, it's Peter's brother.
He said to him, there is a lad here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish, but what are they for so many people?
Okay, so here we have Andrew, who's the only one that's looking around.
Yeah.
Okay, so Philip is going, okay, let's get the calculator, let's look at all the bakeries, and there's no way that we're going to have enough money.
Yeah.
And so all the disciples are like pulling their hair, they're overwhelmed, and Andrew is looking around because he has this gift to see individuals.
And he saw a kid. He saw a kid who had a lunch.
Yeah, I mean, his mother that morning, packed a little lunch.
Go here, Jesus. Here you go.
Go here, Jesus. We have 5 loaves of bread, okay?
Yeah, that should be enough
2
for you to
fish,
eat. Yeah.
okay. So while you're listening, look at the mess I'm making. While you are listening to Jesus,
you can eat something,
Andrew sees this.
One kid with a lunch.
Exactly. That's all Andrew needed. And he actually recognizes that the gift is small.
Yeah.
But he has learned that he has an extraordinary master. See, he has learned that Jesus is the answer to the problems in the world. Right. So instead of saying, oh, that's too small.
He said, okay, here's something. What do you think about that, Lord?
Yeah, he says, I know it's not much.
Small,
I mean,
hey.
it actually says it here. What is this for so many people? But here's the gift.
Yeah.
There's no gift too small.
Yeah.
Oh,
and Andrew knew that.
And what the master could do with that.
Most people would have not, first of all, seen the kid.
That's true.
You would not have seen the kid.
That's right.
Pat him on the head. Yeah, we'll get on my son.
Yes.
But secondly, to see that he had a lunch and then to bring it to Jesus.
Yes, that's right. And who would have imagined what Jesus was going to do with this 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish? I mean, there's no way you could know. I want to say something. Can I say something?
I'm going to stop you. I've never been able to stop you, so go ahead.
You're not going to do that today, right? Many years ago, when I was in the middle of this problem that I just spoke about, I had one other person who challenged me. I had been in this country for 14 years, and they challenged me. It was a teacher that I had in high school, and they said, you have done nothing with what God has given you. And I was like, hey, come on, I'm a music teacher. And I did. No, they said, you have to do more. I mean, God has given you talents. You have to do things for, and I was just so upset that I came back from Argentina and I went to my first master's degree. And I was in the middle of starting my master's degree, and I realized that I had nothing to give God. I had an accent. I was living in a culture that wasn't mine. And I prayed this prayer. And I went to God in front of my computer. I remember as if it was today. I said to God, I have 5 loaves of bread and I have 2 fish.
2 fish.
And I'm going to give you the whole basket. I know it's nothing, but you multiply it however you want, and it's your thing, because this is all I have. Yeah. This is exactly 18 years ago.
And look what he's done.
Well, I mean, I don't know what he's done. I just saw that he has multiplied it. I'm still holding 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish.
But he is the one who's doing anything that's happening in your life.
That was what I'm trying to say, is that no gift is too small because we have an extraordinary master, not because we have extraordinary power.
No.
We are ordinary people.
Yeah, there's nothing in you and me that would produce anything great.
Exactly.
Nothing.
I have another thing in my hand, and it's, my mom used to always joke because, my dad was a public speaker. I was a public speaker. I write books. My dad wrote books. And my mom was like, well, what did I do for the Lord? You know? And I went, well, you had me. You lived with Dad for 55 years. They were married. Encouraged him all those 55 years. My mother made, like I said before, all the little flowers I wear in my hair. She made this one. She made this hat. She was an Andrew. She was behind the scene. She prepared things for my dad. She prepared things for me. And she knew she was fulfilling God's mission, that was her mission. And in her memorial, the biography said her mission was to bring her daughter to Jesus so that she could preach about him. That was it.
Yeah.
And she died knowing that she had fulfilled her mission. And it was one person.
One person.
You know, have you heard about Moody and who brought him to Jesus?
No, who was it?
He had a Sunday teacher, a Sunday school teacher. Everybody had given up on Moody.
Yeah.
You know, because he didn't have a lot of education.
Yeah.
He was quite a little bit about him. And this Sunday teacher said, this kid has more in him.
Isn't that something?
So one day he went to a shoe store where Moody was working. And he said, you have to accept Jesus in your heart because there's more worth to you than what you know. And that day, and actually we have a date that Moody says, tells in his story, his life story. That day he accepted Jesus, and look what Moody did.
Made a difference.
Dwight Moody converted thousands of people.
Yeah, tens of thousands. In fact, no one had been heard by as many people as Dwight Moody had been heard by in that day.
Exactly. And so you think about Peter. See, tradition tells us that Andrew went took the gospel to the north, and he died in southern Greece. That's a tradition. We don't hear about Andrew after Pentecost at all. But you see, wait, Peter is doing the big, 3,000 people converted in one day.
Yeah.
And then you say, yeah, but Andrew brought Peter to Jesus.
Yeah.
So obviously God used Andrew to bring Peter, and Peter did the sermon for the 3,000 and who knows how many more.
Yeah, who knows?
So there is no gift too small because we have an extraordinary master. And we want to encourage anybody that might be struggling with their self-worth and that they have nothing to bring to God. You know, maybe they have, I don't know, the ability to make good cookies or to smile or to encourage or to counsel.
That's right.
And they will be in the kingdom because of you. For me, it's one of those things, and I always like to head to the cross at the end of our program because I still remember that one prayer where I said to God, you know, I have nothing. I have an accent. I'm not from here. And on top of that, I was getting divorced at that time. And if there was any thought of being a minister someday, well, the thought was going to be gone because who's going to hire somebody divorced, right? Well, God had a whole different plan. And I said to God, I don't really have much. I actually have nothing other than 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. And I'm going to put this at the foot of the cross in this little light of mine. You do whatever you want with it. And God has a way to take ordinary people and give them extraordinary grace because he's an extraordinary master. And who knows what he'll do with your 5 loaves of bread.